Well, hello there and welcome to the bathroom of the dollhouse where all the isolated thinking gets done. That's right, for another reading from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Just Elfers for March 4th, the day of creative isolation. That's right, and here at the top of the page is a visual representational image of the day of creative isolation. We have us an image of, what could it be? Boom, it's a little bit of a kitten in a top hat, if you like. Isolated. He looks a little fearful going by the eyes there, if you recognize. Does that speak to the day of creative isolation? Hey, who's to say? Sometimes these things don't necessarily line up. Though I would say the cat or kitten, if you like, is kind of isolated, if you like. That said, not altogether all too important, the visual representational image. I just like folks to see what's kind of going on off camera, so you're part of that particular paradigm with what's going on the page there. That said, what is important around here is it's March 4th, and so it's somebody's birthday. So if your birthday is March 4th, I just want to say happy birthday. That's what's important, all right? But if this video finds you late, I don't know, days, weeks, months, whatever the case may happen to be, I hope you had a happy birthday in that circumstance. That said, a lot of times folks like to join in randomly or more ideally to celebrate. And so if that's the case, I just want to say hello, welcome, and I hope you enjoy yourself. Now, before I dive in with the read direct, something I like to take a few minutes to do, and that is roll some dice. That's right, this is the DykASSt or birthday broadcast, so I like to live up to the namesake, but I do so more importantly for synchronicity's sake. And here I rolled us a 4 and a 2 for a 6. Now, what is synchronicity, you're probably wondering? Well, my friends, as I've heard it told, the universe or the higher powers that be, pick your poison, it's often apt to put things in our path to help us realize our goals or manifest our aspirations. But too often we got the blinders on to what's going on around us. Yeah, we may see things, but we maybe don't lend them much credence or significance for what they are. So this is a little bit of an experiment, if you like, an examination into getting those blinders off and seeing what the universe might be putting in our path. Now, how do we do that? Well, we kind of need a sign, if you like, something that we can't help but recognize. That's right, something mutually agreed upon between us and the universe. All right, so what would that be? Your daily numbers. That's right. And that said, you don't have to go with the numbers that I rolled for you. The intention is there, but it's probably ideal you get your own set of dice so you can ascribe directional values to number sets as well as time limits with which to go in those directions. You're essentially letting the universe take the wheel and drive, all right? That said, once you've got that all established, I don't know, pick out a place that's near and dear to your heart, or maybe some place you haven't gotten out into the world and seen yet. And then once you get there, like I said, get those blinders off, because outside of your numbers, you never know. The universe might start to put a little bit of a theme into your path. Let's take the visual representational image there. Kittens and hats, all right? Hey, you know what? You might start seeing people wearing old top hats as you go down the street. I know you say it's probably not likely, but you never know. It could also be something up on a advertisement, if you like, or a mural on the side of a building. So just be on the lookout for such things. You might start to see something random start to pop up all over the place. And again, I would take that as a sign the universe is with you on your path. That said, maybe you get off this first directional value time limit. Maybe you're not seeing anything at the end of it. Never fret, just kind of take it in stride, keep going. You're getting your steps in at the very least, right? That said, maybe it's something small that you don't happen to notice right off the bat. You stop, collect yourself, look around. Hey, you know what? Maybe you see somebody with a 6 or a 42 on a jersey there. You know what? We'll take that as a sign that you're on the right path. Maybe roll yourself a time limit there in this instance, and maybe they're your little bit of a white rabbit to follow. See where they lead you, all right? So get a time limit going and see where they go. But keep yourself a little bit of a buffer. You don't want those folks to spy you stalking them, all right? Because it could be argued you're stalking them. But you know what? If they happen to notice you, just be upfront, open about what you're doing. Show them your dice. Show them this video, perhaps, so that they know you're not altogether crazy. That's right. Lump it on my shoulders. I'm the crazy one, all right? That said, you never know. It might just so happen that it's this individual's birthday, too. Oh, savvy that, savvy that. I often like to use that example because you never know, all right? It could be something synchronous like that, or synchronistic, if you like. I think synchronous has to do with orbits, right? So that said, you know what? Maybe they're apt to join you. And if they do, you know what? That's great, because as I've heard it told, the more people who are focused on the same thing are apt to beget greater results. So that said, you got your new partner here on this journey with you. You roll your dice, your directional value, celebrating your birthday, getting to know each other. Maybe at the end of this one, you find yourself in front of a building with, what's this? Oh, the old 42 in the address there, or a 6, whatever it may be. Maybe it just so happens to be a magic shop. That's right. You go in there and what's this? Hey, maybe they got kittens running around too. I've been to a place that has cats in it before. I don't think it's advisable because you never know who's allergic and not. But you know what? You go in, the individual behind the counter asks if they can help you. Hey, just let them know. Hey, the two of us are here on synchronicity terms, all right? We're trying to stack up some coincidences, all right? And they say, what are you talking about? This is a magic shop. And you're like, I know. We're in the market for some real magic, not just illusions. And he goes, well, there's some collapsible top hats in the back. Oh, there you go. All right, so there you go. Another theme lining up for you. I think you get the idea, all right? So get out there, see, taste, touch, smell, intuit just a little bit of the magic, and I think you're apt to understand why I brought it up. All right, so synchronicity in the can there. Let's get on with your birthday reading. All right, your month is March, your day is the 4th, your sign is 12 to 15 degrees Pisces of the Pisces II period specifically, and your quality and element is mutable water. All right, March 4th, the day of creative isolation. Those born on March 4 are able to live and work in isolation without having too much contact with the outside world. And although many born on this day do not consciously choose isolation, nevertheless, it often proves to be an important recurring theme in their lives, so that again and again they find themselves either physically, emotionally, or spiritually cut off from their fellow human beings or environment. However, to most born on this day, being alone is not a lonely experience, but rather a chance to be productive. And even when invited to go out and have a terrific time, they may choose to stay home, not out of fear or negativity, but simply because they believe they will enjoy it more. Highly evolved or creative individuals born on this day see their relative isolation as essential to doing their best work. And their powers of concentration are usually excellent, and as they are comfortable with themselves, they face few distractions or anxieties when alone. Socially, those born on this day generally prefer the company of a few close friends rather than a large number of lighter acquaintances. Intimacy has a very special meaning for March 4 people, and they tend to seek it out both in their relationships and their surroundings. And those born on this day are generally happy in modest, secure spaces where they are surrounded by the objects they love most. And when in larger places or pressed by crowds, they may begin to feel a bit insecure. However, when they take part in social occasions at which they feel at ease, they are able to carry the same feeling of special intimacy with them and share it with others. Setting up and running any sort of home or office comes naturally to these cozy people. They have a good feeling for what is comfortable in a simple, elegant way. And perhaps this is because their material needs tend to be modest and they are not particularly impressed with luxury. And March 4 people find great satisfaction in sharing the results of their work with others whom they may not even know. Hearing about someone who liked what they did can mean more to them than meeting the admirer face to face, which could well embarrass them. And the shyness of March 4 people is very endearing quality, or a very endearing quality, rather. But those born on this day must also learn to be aggressive when necessary and stand up for what they want. They may find that they have learned on their own, or they may find that what they have learned on their own stands them in good stead when it is time to be more assertive. All right. Very interesting birthday dynamic here indeed. I would say this, what's also interesting is this is a very sparse birthday reading as far as that's concerned. But that said, I thought they injected a lot of interesting dynamics in there, even though it wasn't one of the more well rounded birthday reads I've encountered. To say they don't really dive into what you like as parents or what's the other stuff in a relationship or even siblings, friends. But you know what? It was in there just a little bit, I would say. That said, I just like folks to know that because it shows a little bit of the dynamics that are going on in the book there. That said, I also like to provide a little bit of a commentary. So let's dive in with some notes I like to make here. I kind of trying to dive in with maybe making connections with days previous, also things I found of interest. So let's dive in, shall we? We got March 4th, the day of creative isolation. You're able to live and work in isolation, the book says, and you may not consciously choose such a state, but it apparently proves to be a running theme, at least in your life, all right? And in no small part, this has popped up from time to time in this period, so you're not alone in that respect. And using such stretches of time as an opportunity to get work done. All right. You also explore yourselves in your dreams as well as fantasies. And for you, this may not be so different in such respects. All right. One particular facet that isn't specific to them, however, is this preference to abstain from leaving your environment, even if you're invited out. Well, it may be the same, but it hasn't come up in days previous. So this is a little bit of a novel entry here. And it's specifically because you feel as though your time would be more enjoyed by yourself. All right. Not saying, again, that that doesn't apply to others, but it's brought up for you specifically. And I certainly understand that dynamic myself. But for you, it's brought up specifically, like I said. And you may also be all the better for it from a creative output standpoint as well. The reading claiming your great powers of concentration being better served without distraction or external anxiety, which seems rather common sense, I would say. But again, it hasn't been mentioned for anyone else here in some time, if at all. And this isolated theme also extends to your personal relationships too, apparently. Foregoing crowds, you may prefer modest, secure settings, the likes of which may foster a richer form of intimacy, which the reading also claims has a very special meaning for you, which to me makes all the sense in the world. Much like your work, you sound as though you want to be able to focus on the people that you're close to without distractions, also outside influences that might pop up, stealing that attention from between the two of you there, or three, four, whatever the case may be. But this added facet of also being surrounded by things that you love is also a novel inclusion. I don't think I've ever seen this pop up either, which I would suppose only helps further bolster a sense of security in certain respects. But all told, you're additionally said to be modest, enduring in your shyness, hearing of a compliment meaning more to you than actually receiving it directly. Another novel inclusion. Also fascinating, I would say. And I think I kind of understand in no small part too. But you're also said to be cozy individuals, unassuming, modest in your endeavors, also with probably individuals, I would assume. But the only standout piece of advice being to assert yourself more. Very interesting, and I think that kind of common sense. But you're gonna get what you want, which may not be too difficult, I would think, based on everything that you've developed for yourself in your seclusion, from the sounds of it. Which I find surprising insofar as such things tend to go the other way in those respects for the other people who isolate themselves. To say it actually might be in need of a little bit of cultivation on their part, considering such isolation. Surprisingly modest length birthday breakdown, like I said again, but it tracks for a modest individual, perhaps. And it's interesting too is the Aquarius period. They seem to write to the theme, and maybe they did so a little bit here as well. That said, I got the idea that you're a strong individual from the breakdown, even though you're isolated. And kind of like I said, for those other folks, it's not always the case. But here nor there, they still said you should probably work on asserting yourself. So, interesting inclusion of advice. That said, that's been your birthday breakdown. So, let's move on to your numbers and your planets. All right, let me get the book here in front of me. Those born on the 4th day of the month are ruled by the number 4 and the planet Uranus, or Uranus, depending upon how you like to say it. And those ruled by the number 4 tend to be highly opinionated and sometimes argumentative, all right? And generally, March 4 people are more concerned with expressing their individuality than with amassing wealth, which is typical of most people ruled by the number 4. Ruled by the planet Uranus, number 4, people tend to be quick and explosive in their change of mood, qualities which are here softened by the influence of the planet Neptune, which is the ruler of Pisces, and therefore making most people born on March 4 either dreamy or unconventional or both. All right. Highly personalized numbers and planets entry today. Sometimes they just kind of copy paste certain dynamics in there, but here nor there, they didn't do that for you today. So let's dive into it, shall we? The number 4 and the planet Uranus for high opinion and sometimes argumentative nature, which interestingly I didn't really pick up on in the breakdown. Doesn't mean it's not true, but it's just interesting it didn't include it. So they certainly had the space, all right? Which is an rare inclusion also for these number 4 days. Usually this thing is brought up with a erratic and explosive dynamic, not the argumentative or high opinion type nature. Whether it's an attraction to higher ideals or a magnetic influence in dissolving absolutes and rigid natures, it isn't said, isn't so far as like what aspects of Neptune influence such things, because those are traits said to be belonging to Neptune elsewhere in the book. But Neptune influenced individuals are also said to be diffuse and hard to pin down. So I would say that's right on theme with respect to this particular day. Maybe just because people don't get a chance to, perhaps, but I would say it seems to track regardless. Uranus rulerships are also said to beget highly individualized people with eccentric, spontaneous, impulsive, and rebellious natures. Also not people who don't do things in a straightforward kind of fashion. And I'd say this case seems to hold true in a lot of respects. But in its way, it's also largely opposite to how this is generally realized, I would say. You're doing so in an isolated manner, kind of with yourself. But again, it's kind of hard to pin down because other folks are like, you don't want to go out? You don't want to enjoy yourself? Hey, I enjoy myself at home. It seems abstract to a lot of folks, I would say. Maybe rebellious in a certain kind of way. Other forms of that being realized, hey, literal rebellion. They're out there, maybe spray painting walls and such, trying to upturn the government or whatever. I would say, hey, maybe you do that too, but at home, all right? So it's a little bit different kind of rebellion in those respects. So what else did I have to say here? The opposite of this erratic kind of nature for a typical Neptune day. And, it may kind of speak to Neptune softening as much, all right? And a lot of Neptune folks, they tend to be said to have their head up in the clouds, also kind of fascinated with higher ideals. And in this particular period, they've been committed to causes. And in the past few days, I've kind of seen that dynamic shift a little bit more towards a focus on person's individualized nature there. And I would say that seems to track here today also. But you know what? Uranus is also said to be a planet that electrifies any given planet that it's coupled with. And it kind of shakes up the atypical nature that's ascribed to as much. So it may just be that Uranus is changing things up there for you. Putting Neptune, what do you call it? Maybe the cement shoes on you, keeping you rooted, if you like. Who's to say? But in any event, that's been your numbers and planets. Hopefully I imparted a little bit more value to it for you outside of just what they put in the book, even though they highly personalized it for you. But let's move on to your tarot. That's right, one of the more eclectic of the New Age metaphysical ideologies. But hey, it's here in the book. Sometimes we can make connotations with things that we've seen in the breakdown, etc. So let's get into it, see what we see. And then we can just leave it here in the book. We don't have to take it home with us and start dealing out the cards, if you like. All right, so let's just take a look here. The number 4, or the 4th card rather, of the major arcana is the Emperor. who rules over worldly things through wisdom, the primary source of his power. And the emperor is stable and wise. The force of his authority cannot be questioned. And the positive associations of this card are strong will and steadfast energy. Negative indications include stubbornness, tyranny, and even brutality. Interesting. I didn't pick up on the negatives from you at all, but who's to say? Maybe it's baked in there to some extent. Let's dive back into the notes here, see what I had to say. This particular entry, total copy-paste job. Not altogether outside the realm of what's typically associated here with the way they write the tarots, but sometimes they'll button it with a little bit of a personal little facet there. Just not today. So let's dive in, shall we? The emperor ruling over worldly things through wisdom. All right, primary source of his power, they said. I would say it's quite ironic insofar as the worldly aspect factors in with someone who may not leave the house all that often. Although I'd argue such a thing facilitates a kind of wisdom that even the most traveled of individuals may not be able to acquire in some respects, all right? It's how that time alone is spent, okay? If you got the books in front of you, you're always researching stuff, you may be getting more wisdom than other people are from direct experience. Who's to say? I have to assume that's the case here. Though with that wisdom, one must realize that there's value in getting out into the world, okay? I'm sure you realize that. You just have to, all right? Even if it's just to test leaving your own comfort zone, all right? We got to do that sometimes. We got to test the waters, even if it's just dipping in a toe, all right? But with positives of a strong willpower, a steadfast energy, I'm sure you're up to any given circumstance or challenge that may arise. Just mind your modesty, I would say. They said it's an endearing quality of yours, cozy individual. You don't want to foster any of the tyranny or brutality that they brought up as a negative. I'd say a certain amount of stubbornness is probably baked into the bargain here, however. So just find a good balance. And to say you're stubborn, you're not going out with anybody, all right? You're going to live or die on the mountaintop of your own seclusion because that's where you're comfortable, I would say. But in any event, I would say this card was particularly apt, though it has to be framed in a totally different, unconventional way. But hey, that speaks to the numbers and planets too, all right? How that's realized, that particular Uranian dynamic shaking things up, I would say. Totally flipping the meaning of the tarot card in those particular conventional approach to the terms. So, any event, that's been your tarot. Let's move on to your health. All right, here we go. Those born on March 4 must really work on developing their social side. All right. Hobbies, clubs, or recreational activities that involve sharing a good time with others are all recommended. And as far as exercise is concerned, all forms of physical exertion that are social in nature, such as team sports and dancing, can contribute greatly to their physical and mental well-being. And although quite capable of cooking for themselves, March 4 people will be happiest when meals are occasions that provide a comfortable setting for social interaction. All right, they're really drilling down on it for you. However, those individuals born on this day relegated by fate or accident to be with groups of people without let-up may suffer terribly if their personal space is denied them for long periods of time. Very interesting. Psychological difficulties arising from childhood, lacking in privacy, or from parental rejection generally respond to therapy. All right. Very interesting. That's not typical stuff in a health entry. Psychological stuff, it comes up here and there, but not typically. And I would say that particular aspect, it would have been better placed in the breakdown itself, help make it more well-rounded, like I said. Here nor there, they picked up the slack and they put it in the health. All right. So let's dive into what I had to say here. They said work on developing your social side. All right. We get it, right? The testing of that comfort zone that I mentioned. Also expanding that worldly wisdom in the bargain, all right? Social interaction with both exercise and diet also recommended. Rather rare entry, but it has come up once in a while. What else do we have here? It's also, and this is probably the first time this has happened. I don't know why I wrote that, because it's happened a time or two before. The other folks who don't like to get out there in the world, right? Maybe cut back on dairy, though, interestingly. Because they didn't really recommend foods for you specifically. A lot of times these breakdowns will do that, specific foods for this individual, and I think they kind of pick that based on the planetary influences, if my logic and reasoning is any kind of indicator. But I said cut back on dairy because the Pisces body area is the lymphatic system, as well as the lower legs, feet, and toes. There in the lymphatic system, it's you tend to build up the mucus with the milk and the dairy there. So if you cut back on it a little bit, help things keep flowing, right? Human beings don't have a secondary heart that just pumps the lymphatic system like some other creatures in this world. So we have to be moving and grooving to get those lymph nodes that are buried in muscle groups to be pumping themselves, right? But just cut down on the dairy so you can help them do their job, I would say. But again, no specific foods mentioned or quality of exercise for that matter. Just a facet of it being a social thing, help get you out into the world. So what I would assume it's probably moderate, and I say that because Neptune days tend to have a light kind of exercise. Sometimes they'll shake up the dynamic. Those people have their head up in the clouds. They say they need a more grounding kind of exercise to bring them down once in a while. But Uranus, when it gets brought up, it tends to shake things up, like I said. So sometimes it'll flip the dynamic. So I would say moderate is probably good for you. Typically, like a Mars day, this is why I say that. Typically, a Mars day with their god of warlike energy, they get aggressive exercise, even combative sports. But throughout the entire Aquarius period, where Uranus was the ruler, I think I'm getting that right, they essentially all got light exercise. So a total anomaly. And the only thing that I could reason was that Uranus was shaking that up as well. So moderate exercise, I would say. Explanation, the examination of being forced into social settings without your isolation and therapy for such things is a novel inclusion, however. Also fascinating, I would say. So I'm glad they brought that up. They also said that you specifically need your isolated time. That kind of thing doesn't come up very often, so I found it particularly interesting. That said, that's been your health, so let's move on to some advice. All right, here we go. Can you guess what they're going to say? I bet you can. Make an effort to interact with more people. All right, develop your social skills and don't get used to being alone as an escape. All right, stay in touch with the perceptions of others. All right, quick, fast, down and dirty with the advice, and they're just getting kind of redundant at this point. But you know what? I think they have a good reason to. They're trying to make a point, and they're being redundant because sometimes it takes us hearing it 38 times before we caught into it. Other times it takes things being phrased in different ways for us to finally have heard it and then realize, hey, you know what? I need to get to action. So I would say that's why they're doing that here. Now, they don't do that all the time, but it does pop up on occasion. That's what did I have to say about what they had to say. All right. They said, make an effort to socialize and develop your social skills. All right. We saw that coming. All right. Again, I'm sure you see how there's value in wisdom in as much and what can be gained from that. That's the question of acting on it. All right. You also stand to add some richness to your life, I would argue. Though in my experience, it's only like 1 out of 10 times that you gain something from it. So it's like, what's the value add, right? It seems like a losing proposition in most cases. So that's apt to keep you at home. I would say just keep trying it out, all right? It might be worth the trip. You never know. We also just need to get our head down out of the clouds sometimes and maybe find value in something, who's to say. What else did they have to say here? 1 out of 10 times... to stay home with regard to that being more fun dynamic also mentioned in the breakdown. So we might need to buck that once in a while. You get it. Don't get used to being alone as an escape. Very interesting, I would say, though I'd say it makes sense if going out is an escape from where you're often rooted. But again, interesting, they're just trying to get you to get out and socialize, I would say. Stay in touch with the perception of others. Social element notwithstanding, other perceptions add to that richness that we brought up, that way of seeing life a little bit differently. It also contributes to worldly wisdom, the thing that was brought up for the emperor there. Even if a bad encounter pops up, but only further bolsters previous ideas and concerns, I would say. There's things to learn how not to be. All right, you get out there, you learn like, oh yeah, I'm not going to be doing that. Thanks for showing me that. All right, I learned not to, so we can gain some experience and knowledge in that regard too. Again, it's just about perspective and what you can take from such things. Any event, that's what I had to say about the advice. Got a little bit mumble mouth there because I lost my place. I had to write it in a book, and my writing gets tiny in those respects, but hopefully you drew some value from it. That said, let's move on to your meditation. All right, that's right. It's your birthday. You get a meditation. Something to think about as we're here in the bathroom pontificating. That's right. The place to do it. Okay. Some people who are silent have nothing to say. Interesting. I think I know why they said this for you, but I'm not picking up why. All right, once more. Some people who are silent have nothing to say. All right, it's your birthday, it's your meditation. I'm not going to throw my spin on it or try to influence it for you one way or the other. That defeats the purpose of a meditation, am I right? So that's just for you. Once more, some people who are silent have nothing to say. All right. Your meditation in the can, as it were. Let's move on to your strengths and your weaknesses. That's right. Let's hold up the objective mirror and see where we got the girth and where we're otherwise a little more deflated or atrophied within the metaphor. That's right. Your strengths, you're self-contained, you're intimate, and autonomous. Autonomous, another word I can't remember the definition of for today. It's been happening to me all week. All right, but your weaknesses. Oh, let's take that mirror, that objective mirror I mentioned, but flip it to the side that blows up your face. And maybe shows off the things you're otherwise a little more superficially insecure about. That's right, at least within the metaphor there. Your weaknesses, if you like. You're fearful. I didn't pick up on it. You're shy. And you're self-involved. Oh, we got that. I don't know if I picked up on fearful, though. Hey, you know what? Sometimes these things, I like to make a case that our weaknesses can be strengths. All right. There was a day, maybe 2-3 months ago, impulsive popped up as a strength. And the very next day, it traded to a weakness. I'm thinking to myself, what's the disconnect? How can there be such a difference on days that are juxtaposed once to one another? I think it just depends on the situation, also the individual. Now, I've been having a hard time the past week making my case. Certainly doesn't help when I can't be definitive about a definition of a word, but hey, let's try to make my case here for how your strengths can help improve upon your weaknesses, and how your weaknesses can be strengths. All right, be prepared for me to flounder. Let's get into it here. Your strengths being self-contained, intimate, and autonomous. All right, for your weaknesses, you're self-contained. I would say you're going to take the time to really figure out what you need to do. All right, you're in your little seclusion there. You got all your notes up on the wall. You're doing all the work that's necessary to really, put out the formula to improve upon your weaknesses. So I think you're going to get it done in that respect. You're also intimate. I would say that's there's a lot of different ways to approach this, but let's consider the people that you have in your tight-knit social group, all right? I'm sure they see the value in you as an individual. And so if you need help improving upon your weaknesses, I would say they're going to rally and come to you if you need help. So you can have them help you overcome such things. Intimacy is a very strong characteristic there. But you're also autonomous, on the top of my head, you're kind of moving automatically, all right? Autonomy, all right? You're individual. Maybe that's more along what they're getting at. Very individualistic. You're striking your own path, and you can do so in an isolated manner. Okay, that's huge. A lot of people can't function within four walls. They just come home to sleep. But you get all your big work done in those respects. Even creatively flourish. All right, that's huge. But then outside in the real world, hey, maybe that's not the case. Very interesting. And that didn't come up as a weakness, though we know it may be a little bit of one, right? That said, how does autonomous help you with our weaknesses here? Again, I would say, you're able to rally in a very specific way, assuming you can find yourself in your perfect environment there. Weaknesses, though: fearful, shy, self-involved. How can these be strengths? I would say if you're fearful of certain things, though again, I didn't really pick up on this in the breakdown, we're going to be reserved when we need to be reserved. I would say they brought this up because, hey, you don't necessarily want to go out in the real world. Who's to say? But again, hey, there might be a little bit of risk involved there. So you might be someone who's not taking the unnecessary risks. And I would say that's a strength, because you're not going to get into trouble as much as some of the other people who do. All right. But I think they're bringing it up as a weakness because, again, they said that you need to be more assertive. What risks aren't you taking where you would potentially gain something? All right. You might be a little bit too reserved in those respects. They said shy is a weakness. I don't know that I picked up on that so much. In this regard, it said that you were endearing, you were very modest. I think those are huge qualities, but it's probably that it's just a little bit too much of it. All right, you got to expand it out a little bit. Break outside your comfort zone again. All right. How is shyness a strength? I would say it's such a deviation from the things that we encounter with a lot of people. Some people are flamboyant, boisterous, sensational, and it just sometimes it's too much. Folks need a little bit of reserve. So I think that's a strength in those regards. But you don't just want to be the wallflower, because then people aren't even going to notice you. They won't lend you much credence. Got to have a little bit of something. And I'm sure once folks get to know you, that's where that intimacy comes in. And you know what? Some people see that stuff as standoffish. So, and I didn't pick up on that here, but I certainly have gotten that in my life, so I know all about it. But again, I think we can see the strengths and the weaknesses in it. Also, self-involved. Again, I would say that's going to come off kind of standoffish, but what's the strength there being self-involved? Hey, you know what? We know how to close things down, focus on things that need to get done, because, hey, we know how to put up the blinders. That's right. And you know what? There can be strength in that, all right? We know how to, boom, commit to task there. But we're doing it too much, hey, you know what? It might not serve you in the long run. So make sure you take them down even just a little bit so you can peek over the top. He's like, man, they're bringing it framing up so you can peek over the top, all right? And if it's not the best case to be made, my bag of tricks there, but I think you get the idea, your strengths and your weaknesses. That said, I also like to say, don't get rid of your weaknesses altogether, because they're a part of who you are, all right? They make up that specific magical entity that is you, I would say. Magical, who's to say that? That's kind of a flimsy word there, but yeah, let's stick with it, all right? That said, that's been your strengths and weaknesses. Let's move on to those born on this day. When we get into those born on this day, something I like to do is not only see who shares your birthday, that can be very interesting, but look at this from the perspective of drilling down on and figuring out our passions, all right? Try to take some inspiration from the folks born that share your company and what they did to get in the book, all right? It's too often I get out in the world and meet individuals, ask them what they do, and more importantly, if they like it, and a lot of times they don't. And I think it's just because they got into a job right out of school to make ends meet, and they didn't do the work that was necessary to maybe find something that spoke to them. They got the fulfillment out of life in going to work and doing the thing that they love. Because I think it takes time and energy and work to figure those things out a lot of times, and folks don't often have that, all right? Because you got to carve out a big part of your day and start doing some work to make things fit, all right? So I think this is the perfect opportunity to start examining that, all right? Maybe fuel the fires of inspiration, because if there's anything I can wish for you on your birthday, it's that you're jumping out of bed doing backflips in the morning to get on with your day, finding something fulfilling about life, all right? Because then once you've got that in your bag, all right, you know what? Everything's great, all right? It's a heck of a lot better than when you're just climbing that corporate ladder. Yeah, the money's nice and maybe it's easy, but at the end of the day, what are you doing? You're just rallying to go do the same thing over again. And at the root of it, it's not important to you. All right, so let's find something important. Let's make that the focus as we get into those born on this day. All right, bear with me. I often pronounce these names wrong. All right, here we go. Irina Ratushinskyia. There we go. We're starting off strong there. A Soviet dissident poet wrote, "I shall live to see it." An imprisoned civil rights activist, it says. We also have Antonio Vivaldi, an Italian Baroque composer, and one of the works responsible for The Red Monk. We also have Dom Pedro of Portugal, a prince. It says Prince Henry the Navigator and teacher to great explorers, a patron, also observatory and navigation school builder. Interesting. Somebody's got to build those observatories, right? We also have Margaret Osborne DuPont, who was a tennis player and 5-time French Open, 7-time Wimbledon, 24-time U.S. national singles, doubles, and mixed titles winner. We also have Robert R. Wilson, a physicist, sculptor, and is responsible for synchronotron and the Fermilab designer. Interesting. Maybe he sculpted them. I don't know who's to say. We also have Alan Stillitoe, a British playwright and novelist, and responsible for Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner. Sounds like he got out of the house but stayed isolated, going by the title and the breakdown. All right, who else do we have? Lily Krauss, an Austrian pianist. Miriam Makaba, or Makaba perhaps, African singer. Matt Cvetic, Kvetic perhaps, an FBI undercover agent and worked as a mole in the Communist Party there. Very interesting. Charles Gorin, a bridge expert and a syndicated columnist. We also have George Gamow, a physicist, writer of 1, 2, 3, ... infinity. We also have Hans J. Eysenck, 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 perhaps, British psychologist and responsible for the structure of human personality. We also have John Garfield, the film actor, and died at the age of 39. We have a few of these come up this period. Let's try not to make it a trend here. Let's see what they got. Jim Clark, a race car driver. The Flying Scot was his nickname, and a 2-time Formula One world champion, Indianapolis 500 winner, and killed in a crash. So we're following that trend. Let's try to buck it. Here we go. Alice Rivlin, an economist. Excuse me. Alice Riven, an economist. The bronchitis here getting me. Paula Prentice, a film actress. Jan Garbarek, or Jan perhaps, Norwegian jazz tenor saxophonist. And if they're Norwegian, it's probably Jan. We have Knut Rockne, all right, a Notre Dame football coach and killed in a plane crash, it says. They're really focusing on that. So, and Bernhard Kellerman, a German journalist, novelist, and responsible for The Tunnel, and also Kay Lenz, film and TV actress. All right. I know it's a big-ass tall order to take inspiration from other people and their accomplishments, but hey, if I can just put the bug in your ear about stirring up your fires for your passion, hey, mission accomplished, I would say. They had a lot of folks that died in strange ways or too early for their time, I would say, which is unfortunate, but it's been coming up here a little bit. Also, the names have been getting me this week, too. They've been killing me with that stuff. So that's it. Let's make up for it on my side of things. It's not done of malice, but butchering things seems to be the theme of the week here when it comes to the names, because Hooked on Phonics isn't the best tool to be using to pronounce such things. That said, that essentially rounds out your birthday reading. Except to say your season is winter, your sign once again is Pisces, of the Pisces II period specifically, and your quality and element is immutable water. All right. And this has been March 4th, the day of creative isolation. The day of creative isolation from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and you Stelfers. I have an affiliate link for this book up above, a personal message I like to put together for the birthday boys and girls, ladies and gents. So take a look at that if you're interested in seeing that message there. But this book makes an excellent coffee table book. If you're in the market for, I know it said you're an isolationist, but if, hey, you're going to have company over, those intimates that you're close to, this thing's going to help break the ice. And if you're shy, you're going to need a little bit of a tool in those respects, I would say. This thing is going to do it in a very well fashion, even if it's for better or for worse. You never know. Some folks might not like what they hear, all right? And some of these days are kind of down in the dumps sometimes. You never know. That said, this thing's going to get it done for you, and it's going to do a lion's share of the weight lifting there for you. That said, book having been relayed, you click on the thing, support the channel, and you don't have to type it in the browser there. That's not what's important around these here parts. What's important, like I said at the top, wishing you a happy birthday, all right? So, once again, happy birthday, okay? And for everybody else who joined us randomly, we're here to celebrate your intimates with a March 4th individual. I just want to say I hope you enjoyed yourselves and you join us for your birthday reading, all right? That said, before I take us out, lest I forget, your daily numbers, all right? Get out there and let the universe show you it's with you on your path, all right? You're 4 and you're 2 for a 6. You don't have to go with the numbers I rolled for you, like I said. Get out there and just see, taste, touch, feel, smell, intuit a little bit of the magic. You understand why I brought it up for you, okay? And I just want to take a moment to thank you for the pleasure of your time. It's been a privilege to share your birthday with you. I know it was a little bit mumble-mouthed, disjointed there. It seemed like I was laughing at the folks that died. I was laughing at the fact I was coughing. I was suppressing a couple of them here earlier. So if you see me taking a breath, that was why. That having been said, that essentially rounds out your birthday read. It was a pleasure, like I said. I love doing these things for folks. So thanks for letting me share that with you. All right, now get out there, get outside your comfort zone once in a while, all right, and expand yourself. I know you're hard to pin down, but we don't have to isolate all the time. There was that one individual that got out there and explored and wrote the 1, 2, 3 infinity, I think it was. So there's folks that have done it. You can do it too, is what I'm trying to say. So once again, happy birthday and take care of yourselves.